Chronicles TV on air. We are now live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of the Great Assasin Chronicles. In the previous episode, we completed one part of the story, and now today's episode right now, we're gonna finally figure out what this Reaper business is all about. If you're hyped today's episode, make sure that like button subscribe to your channel. As you wish, my lord. The Reaper and the Assassin exchange. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the Assassin exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecutions? Both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the Assassin exchange? I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? I desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experience in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Under enough dilatory chatter, counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within the man's testimony. So what do we have? Reaper and the Assassin exchange. I never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me behind the Assassin exchange. There's no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. I mean, we got 2 of the 3, so I don't know about Wilson. I'm just saying. I mean, every damn time I play, if we get to the testimony part, it's either I'm taking really long, trying to figure out what could be it, or we have to change the thing, as I thought. So let's figure out what we need to do, because somehow the answer is right there without me pressing anything. And when I think I got it, I don't. So. Hold it! There is a link between you and Gregson, though. Of course, we were close acquaintances. We worked on numerous cases together. I consider the man to be a mentor of sorts. He taught me a new number of important lessons. He did? Such as what? Where to buy good fish and chips, and such like. Well, that was convincing. Dr. Wilson was a coroner, of course, but that was some time in the past. And in any case, I understand it was several years ago now that he was invited to work at a Japanese university. That's right. He was visiting professor at the Imperial Yuma University in Tokyo. It should be unambiguously clear that there no link exists between myself and him. In other words, I had no motive for sending some assassin across the ocean to kill the man. Wait a minute, I think I got it. It sounds plausible enough, I want to believe it, but something about this just doesn't quite sit right with me. I think I got it. Because we found out that who Wilson really was, right? Get to the point. No, not that one. Ah, there we go. That's what we got.
Objection!
There you go, see? We had the right idea. What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint von Zeeks. See, I knew it. At least I didn't spend too time pressing through all that stuff. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see. The defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. He's off his seat, I can tell from here. Order the court! What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not the accursed name again. The professor. I've personally researched all of the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy, the Lord Clint von Zeeks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers to be allowed the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave the vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes, and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord von Zeeks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all concluded together to catch an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and sent him to his death. That's outrageous. And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain. Using the two killers recruited for the Assassin exchange. Order! 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer, to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it, which is why I had to come to Britain, whatever the cost. Say it! You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see without evidence that there's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in the autopsy 10 years ago. What? Secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my client's illustrious sword Karuma before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're the Asogi young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But, unfortunately, back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So, you admitted then, the evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated. It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak! I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it? That's right. Even then. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma. If the result of Clint Von Zeke's autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to prevent the course of justice in the way by one man. To pervert? The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barrick Von Zeeks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exact exchange of assassins. Exactly, and as was established earlier, it has to be the Reaper himself who liaison with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barrick Von Zeeks.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? What you just told to the court? Are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard with my own ears his shameful admission. In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper. What? Lord Von Zeeks. I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. If Lord Von Zeeks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. You! I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... Are we talking about the judge? Him? Whoever the third person may be? I don't think. I don't know. The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulate the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mail Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago, the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court. But he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Von Zeeks, had been killed. can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in the British judicial history. Well, Lord Von Zeeks? 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession. I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the Lord to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. I see now. I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls in place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense claims are utter nonsense. A wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was a wrongdoing with Lord Clint Von Zeek's autopsy. That's utterly untrue. Objection. But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He'd admitted it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say... Reverence the spirit away? Not spirit away, but... the spirit, justice, whatever. I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entering some wild fantasy that can possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and the light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there is really no one left who could testify about the events 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassination exchange. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections? Kazuma, he's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we could go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Von Zeek's autopsy. There is. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks, even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Scythe won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope.
Objection!
Mikotoba, right? Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about the autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who, Ryunosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, please, this trial can end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Von Zeek is...
Take that!
Heaven help us, another Japanese? An expert in forensic medicine, my lord, Professor Eugene Mikotoba, 16 years ago. He came to London with Seishishiro Jigoku and Gejun Asogi as a visiting student. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in the autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor, let me refresh your memory as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the reaper of the masterminding the Assassin exchange. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence, but that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstance that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities. But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me? Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi, you will be remanded following the proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. This futile game of revenge is over. Young Master Asogi. And he screams at the tip of his lungs. That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Court is... Hold it! Who? Mr. Sholmes? This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once. Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Mayor Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at the juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along the prevarications of your superiors? Order in the court. It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices, or a door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push the door open now. The auditors in the gallery have no right to express an opinion in court proceedings. Silence! He's right. The judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. But what would that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. Is there a single person here present who can honestly say, What? The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right. We need to clear this up before the young Tiffany fellow is reprimanded in custody. His eyes change. My lord, you assured the president that you would uncover the whole truth here. Vindicate yourself on this outlandish accusation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yeah! That is the very foundation of British law. A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. Testify! 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 Well, my lord, you'll hear the voice of British justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward to silence. Testify! 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 The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He's accompanying me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer the question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo? Yes? I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you. Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. She sends her regards and a reminder. If you find yourself a dead end, the ear's at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. Oh, of course. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So, it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I going to plunge into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head to the heart of the maelstrom and confront whatever horrors tries to drown me under. Like, comment, subscribe, Chronicles 60 I'm signing out. Hey! That's what I predicted. Let's go.